Foundation has released new data outlining LGBTQ plus people's experiences in the workplace, and it sheds new light on the reality of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Joining me live is Shoshana Goldberg. She's the Public Education and Research Director for the organization. Shoshana, you played a big role in putting this report together. So I appreciate you coming on to talk to us. So talk to us a little bit, break down some of the major findings of this survey.
Good morning.
There we go.
Good morning. Sorry about that. Thank you so much for having me. Yes, so I and my team played a large role. So this was a collaboration between my team, Public Education and Research, and the Workplace Equality team here at the Human Rights Campaign Foundation. So every 5 years since 2008, we've conducted a workplace climate survey where we've surveyed LGBT workers and non-LGBT workers across the United States to get a sense of what the workplace climate is looking for them. This most recent iteration that was fielded in April through June of this year was conducted with about 3,000 people, 2,000 LGBT adults, 1,000 non-LGBT adults from all 50 states across and Washington, D.C. So my team and we worked with analyzing the data, working with our partners to get the survey fielded, to get a large enough sample to be able to break things down by gender and race, as well as working to understand the big findings.
Yeah, so it's interesting since 2008, so you have some history to compare what you're seeing each year and how it changes over the years. So in the report, it states that LGBTQ plus Americans are living in a state of emergency. And so I want you to explain sort of what this means for those in the workplace. And what do you mean? Why? What do you mean a state of emergency?
Yeah, so when we talk about the state of emergency, what we're really been talking about is what's happening in state legislatures and increasingly in federal legislature across the country. So 2023 legislative session saw over 500 anti-LGBT bills introduced into state houses, more than ever before. Upwards of 81 have passed. The vast majority of them have targeted LGBT and transgender non-binary people, particularly trans and non-binary youth. But they impact all aspects of life and well-being, from what sort of healthcare you can access to where you can live openly, to even like what bathroom or facility you can use at school, or in some states, even in like public buildings. So this provides a context for what's going on, because that's one part of the story. The other part of the story is that we're seeing that acceptance and inclusion among like the general population is at the highest that it's ever been. In our report, we saw that 84% of LGBT workers are out to at least one person in their office. That's almost double what we saw in 2008 when it was less than half. And this says that people are feeling safe. We know that it's because people are coming out earlier because they feel safer to come out, and they're wanting to and able to, in many cases, live openly. And the workplace can be one of those opportunities where people can find a safe space where maybe if in the state house, they don't have one. And so that's kind of led to this discrepancy where we're seeing a lot of progress being made. So not only in like the proportion of people who are out, but also, you know, the number of LGBT employees who reported hearing negative jokes and comments about LGBT people has declined by half. The majority of LGBT workers who believe that their employer values differences in sexual orientation and gender identity, it's well over the majority. 71% think their company values differences in sexual orientation. 2/3 thinks they value differences in gender and gender identity. So people are feeling this safety and seeing their employer as a potential resource and safe space, while at the same time we're still seeing some progress that needs to be made.
Yeah, I mean, on that sense, that all sounds positive. That doesn't sound like a state of emergency. That sounds like things are improving in the day-to-day lives in the workplace for those in the LGBTQ plus community. So then I see that disconnect between what they're doing every day and living their lives and working and what's happening politics-wise.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there is two things that are happening. So this state of emergency is very much real. 81 bills passing, more than have ever passed, that targeted LGBT people is an emergency. When people don't know, and people aren't able to access life-saving healthcare, when people can't play on the sports team that they want to play on, or, be out in public because they can't use public accommodations because they have to use one in accordance with their sex assigned at birth as opposed to their gender identity. That is a state of emergency. When we're seeing people under attack and legislatures, spreading disinformation and misinformation about the LGBT community, when we're seeing like increases in hate crimes and attacks on pride parades and LGBT events and drag queen story hours, like this is a state of emergency. And we see workplaces as a potential space to help push back against that. And so we are seeing, for example, that while current jobs, many LGBT people have had good experiences, 1 in 10 LGBT adults have ever been fired from a job because of their LGBT identity. 24% have been passed over for a promotion, and 32% of trans and non-binary people were passed over a promotion because of their gender identity. So we're seeing that, in the past, people like we've seen in the past that 3 out of 10 have been closeted because they were afraid of losing status in the workplace, with that they would lose relationships with coworkers. 4 in 10 have been closeted at least one job because they were afraid of violence, stigma, and threats to their personal safety. Half were closeted due to privacy concerns, and a quarter were closeted because they were afraid of experiencing discrimination. So things have still not quite progressed. And that sort of disconnect is, I think, leading to LGBT people having like mixed experiences in the workplace.
Got it. Thank you so much for clarifying that. And can you talk a little bit about the disconnect and explain what this means? LGBTQ plus workers desire to be out versus who and when someone actually chooses to be out. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So we see that, for example, when we look at who LGBT people are out to. So 84% were out to at least one person at work. But when we look at the power distance between a person and who they are out to, as there's a bigger power distance, the likelihood of being out goes down. So 81% are out to somebody on their team. 70% are out to the direct supervisor. When it gets to HR, only 48% are out. We also see this even when you look at LGBT youth. So we fielded a survey with LGBT youth back in 2022. 2/3 said that they wanted to be open about their identity and their future job, but only half think they'll be able to be their authentic self. And 2/3 are still afraid that they will experience discrimination at work. So while LGBT people, when they're around people that they know and they trust, they feel safe and affirmed and able to be out, there is still this fear of discrimination coming around the corner, particularly like from an institution that may or may not have their back.
All right, Shoshana Goldberg, good information, and awesome that you guys are able to sort of update that with progress that we've made and progress that needs to be made in this arena. We appreciate you coming in to talk to us about it.
Thank you so much.
Thank